Good afternoon and welcome. You're listening live to Heart to Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist, offering this program at KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio Live. And with me is my very best friend, my colleague, my business partner, Dr. Robert Jaffe.
Thank you, thank you.
My pleasure. Welcome. And welcome everybody who's listening to us today. And, hope that you're all safe and you're all well and away from COVID-19, right? And ready for the holidays.
Ready for the holidays, which is going to be a different way for many people of celebrating the holiday. There's both sadness, I think, and joy.
Yeah.
We've made it through another year.
Those of difficult year.
Yeah, difficult year. Very, very powerful year. Lots happened this year.
Many people's lives changed.
Many people's lives changed, and a lot of people are no longer with us.
Right.
And so we're mourning the passing of many people who have died from this horrible disease, and at the same time celebrating that we now have an antidote to it, and that's going to be widely distributed soon. So we can be thankful and happy about that. Looking forward to a much better year. We have a change in our leadership, which we're hoping will be a positive one, and that we will have people who are willing and able to lead us in a more loving, positive direction.
Exactly. I mean, during the past year, a lot has happened to many of us. Whether we are exposed to COVID-19 or not, we have felt it. We have felt the change, and the change. This situation apparently is still going to continue. But just like you said, we have a new direction ahead of us with the vaccinations and other changes that we are hopeful to happen. We are looking at the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, we are.
Right.
We're looking at the light, and now we're actually getting distribution of them very quickly. And I think I'm going to make a prediction. I think by June, everyone is going to have access to the vaccination, and I believe that they've vetted out the science on this pretty well. I've been keeping up on it as best I can, and it looks to me like people who take the vaccination are going to be very protected, and that's what we want, right? We want protection.
And I feel like the more people who are qualified to receive vaccination first, and then subsequently the other people. So by the time it gets to everybody, I guess halfway through, the risk of exposure to COVID becomes less.
Right.
So the more people get vaccinations, and meanwhile, the more, social distancing and wearing masks continues for those who have not, received the vaccine, and even those who have received the vaccine. The faster and quicker and more accurate and more safe everybody is going to be, right? What's your take on that?
Well, I think. Oh, this is the one. So, thank you. So I think that even though I want to say we're over the hump, even in the midst of the virus spreading, we're not quite over the hump, I would say, but we're definitely very close to beating this thing.
Right.
And And that's due to the diligence and hard work of all the scientists and the researchers
Right.
that have been working diligently, many of them 18, 20 hours a day.
Yeah.
Um, and so there's a lot of people, of course, who are skeptical of the vaccine and they say they're going to wait. Um, my view is that I'm not a gambling man, but if I were, I would always want the odds on my side. And the way that I look at it is that the odds of my contracting COVID and getting sick from it are still much higher than the odds of taking the vaccine and having some negative reaction from it. So that's where I am. I'm playing the
I'm
odds.
with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as soon as it's available, I'm going to be getting it, and I hope that my kids will also. My kids are grown now and they make their own decisions, but I'm going to try to tell them my thoughts about it, and they'll do what's right for them. But the bottom line is we're almost over the hump of this horrendous thing that's been worldwide that I've never seen. I'm 71 and I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. I don't believe that my dad, who's now passed away, saw anything in his lifetime. He was born in 1919, and I don't think there's anything been with it, maybe even in this whole century.
Right. Exactly.
So it's been very, very hard on people, and we've had to readjust. But now we're seeing the light, as you said, and I think that we can walk away from this a lot wiser in terms of um, what we've learned, not just about the disease, but also about us as human beings.
Exactly. Yes.
And which
right.
is which is the most important thing. You know, how do we respond to things when things aren't favorable, when things are scary, and how much yet we have to learn about how to do that in a way that doesn't make it worse.
And that plus the fact that life is not about quantity, but it is about quality.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That how much togetherness is important and valued, how much we actually need each other, versus just focusing on individuality, and how to come together during time of difficulty, and how collaborating together can actually help us get rid of the virus
Mm-hmm.
by following everything that we are told to do by the experts,
Right.
So collective thinking, collective getting together, collective effort, and focusing on the quality of human being versus the quantity of who has what,
Mm-hmm.
Is what's going to help us during this difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, at least, this has been, like you, I never had such an experience in my life, and I'm 62, right? And so for me, I have learned a lot about the meaning of life,
Mm-hmm.
the value of life,
Mm-hmm.
and the value of what we have and we don't realize it.
Right.
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 And how we need to understand that and have sense of gratitude for everything around us and everybody around us.
Mm-hmm.
And focus on those things versus temporary happiness.
Yeah, an attitude of gratitude.
Yes.
Is something that I think is so important for us to cultivate, and because gratefulness is right next to godliness, and gratefulness creates love, and love makes us feel a sense of completion. When we are able to give love and receive love, we feel complete. And that's what we're here to do, as therapists, as psychotherapists, and as radio hosts. We're here to give you a sense that there's a lot more right with you,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't focus on, that you focus on what's not right or what you believe you've lost, you don't have, and that creates a negative perspective, which you then take into the world and share with others. And what we want to do, of course, is to create the opposite. We want to create optimism. We want to create positiveness, and we want to create a sense that we respect and that we love each other. And when we go in the opposite direction of divisiveness and fear and hate, it creates much more unhappiness
Exactly.
and sadness for everybody.
And division.
And division. Well,
right.
the division creates that.
Yes, I mean, it becomes like a circle.
Yeah.
You know, we just continue the same path without getting anywhere positive.
Yeah. Right. And so what we've learned to do is in the last 4 years with this administration, unfortunately, is create a we and them mentality, that we are better than them. Mm-hmm. And of course, the we is whoever you happen to be, and the them changes, mm-hmm. right? It's whoever disagrees with us. That it's them. And
so it's like you're either with us or against us.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, that has transpired and has reached its zenith in the United States over the last 4 years, and now I'm hopeful and believing that we are on the cusp of reversing that, and seeing us as all in this together, and that our sameness in terms of our humanity and our desire to be connected in a loving way with each other will win out over the things that are different about us.
Yes, as we see, you know, the virus doesn't select the we people or the them people. The virus has been attacking just about everybody on the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. So when nature doesn't divide us, because this virus was caused by nature, I assume, right? When nature doesn't divide us, how can we divide ourselves?
Yeah. So
it's very, you know, this is a very unique situation with lots of insightful learning. If we want to focus on life, mm-hmm. and how life can change over a split of a second, and then how that change can impact us significantly, as we have been for the past year. You know, this has been a year. Mm-hmm. You know, globally, look at how many people globally have died. We have never had this much of a dying any time during human history. Have we?
Well, wars, of course. Wars, yeah. Which are man-made. Yeah. But not, and of course, you know, in history there have been things like the plague and things like that. But what we're talking about now is in our memory. Yes. You know, certainly from the beginning of the 20th century.
And the technology and the education and the science and everything that we have, we didn't need to let this get this big.
We didn't need to.
We could have prevented that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, we weren't united enough in our efforts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the situation. You know, the united coming together is the name of the game, and we are hopeful that this day forward through the next year and ever after, we don't forget that unity between us. We're all the same.
Right. And we end at every one of our shows in the same way, right? All you need is love.
All you need is love.
So please stay with us. We're about to go a break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about sexuality, and we're going to talk about relationships and loving. So please stay with us.
Welcome back to our commercial break. This is Heart-to-Heart program at KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert here. For those of you who just tuning in, our discussion for this program is about shame, sexual shame, and, you know, body image, and basically where that leads us in our relationship. Right?
Exactly.
And our phone number here live is 951-922-3532. Please call us with your comments, with your questions, you know, with your experiences. And if you know of anybody who may have, may enjoy or benefit from this program, please do introduce our program to them, and we appreciate the fact that you have, given us your hour and following us on YouTube, on this program, everywhere that we have a contact, available to all of you, right?
Absolutely.
So we talked, before commercial, we talked about, the new year and the holidays, and we do wish you well on every choice that you make, and for you to have a safe holidays, and we're going to be talking more about that. And then no matter if there is a holiday or if it's a regular day, or where we are in our life, we grow up with a concept that is called sexual shame.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
So sexual shame is the type of shame that is imposed on us since childhood,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is passed on from generation to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
It is passed on from a mom to a daughter, right? And then to the grandkids, right? And basically, sexual shame, what it tells us is that, we should not enjoy sex. We should not think sexual, which we cannot, focus on our bodily sensations, and everything in the context of social, religion, politics, medicine even, it just tells us to stay away from your sexual self. And then shame on you for being a living being and being a sexual being.
Right, right. Yeah,
Right.
we usually start off our program by saying that we're born into the world as our authentic true selves.
Yes.
But actually, we are born into the world as our authentic true sexual selves.
Right.
Because we are all born in as sexual beings. And our sexuality is intimately connected with our humanity.
Right.
So our maleness and our femaleness, and everything in between is part of who we are as human beings. And we can either be afraid of it, or think negatively of it, or using your word, we can be ashamed of it, or we can learn to celebrate it and enjoy it and believe that it's something positive. And like anything, it's a gift to us if we see it as a gift, and it's a curse to us if we see it as a curse. And sexual shame that you're talking about are basically the messages that we get starting in childhood about our sexuality, about our having sexual parts, having a penis, having a vagina, um, and um, and if those things are honored and respected and valued, those parts of us, then we grow up healthier with less or no shame about it, and we feel good about that part of ourselves, which is so that part of ourselves which is so such a powerful part.
Right.
And we're not talking now today about sexual abuse, which can create a great deal of sexual shame.
Well, that's a different level of shame.
But that's an even deeper level of sexual shame. But we're talking now about just shame that is, I'm not going to say ubiquitous throughout culture, but it happens a lot.
Well, it happens a lot, and basically, sexual shame is also called, a social shame. Because we get all these shameful messages from society.
Right.
And by society, I'm starting with the family of origin, the nuclear family, and going, outside, and then to a larger, family, which is our community and our society, right? And so we're getting contradictory messages, as a matter of fact. In one hand, we are shamed because of our sexuality. In the other hand, market and businesses are promoting shame, promoting sex in a way that is really the opposite of the shame, right? Like by selling information, by porn, by variety of forms, they are kind of promoting sexual activity, where the larger society is telling us, shame on you for being a sexual being.
Right.
Right. So shame, and how do we learn some of the aspect of how we learn to be a shameful sexual being? One of the first place that's really is highly impactful is our body image, right?
Right.
And then through body image, I mean, when we look at all the commercials on billboards, on news, on magazine, on everywhere, basically the larger message is or the silent message is, I should say, that the way we are, we're not good enough, right?
Right.
There is always a need of alteration of a part of our body. There is always the need of covering our skin with variety of cosmetics so that we can look younger, we can look happier, we can look sexier, and that there are lots of information about how our body doesn't smell good, so they can promote perfumes. And for men, usually we see a whole lot less of that. So therefore, men are not so shameful of their body shape.
Right.
Because nobody tells them that they have to have a skinny waistline or larger breast or a firm buttocks or whatever that makes a woman sexy, right?
Right.
Those don't apply to men, right? But then again, everything else for the most part falls on women, and therefore, as a result of the negative body image, we're seeing lots of variety of painful illnesses in society, such as eating disorders, right? And we even have seen suicide as a result of having negative body image,
Right.
right? So we see that sexual shame is a very serious matter in our society, and everybody pretty much in society feels that sexual shame in one way or more. And that's because none of us are excluded from the early messages that we get in our lives, right? So it's a serious matter that we need to consider that. And then the shame also is not just about the female shape or a male shape. We also get messages about how our genitalia is shameful area, right? And for men, it's easier to accept their genital anatomy versus a female. It's more difficult for them to accept who they are as a female, right? Many women are shameful, and they have been taught not to focus on their genital area, right? And therefore, it's hard for them to identify how they can experience pleasure at a place where it is so unknown for them, right? And so some of them are brave enough to actually go out and find sources like a sex therapy so that they can understand about themselves. But many women also culturally and also because of religious factor, they never do that. So
Right.
And then they suffer, of course, in their sexual relationships, but they rather to go through the suffering rather than going through discovery and finding about themselves, right? And many of women who have sex in their marriage is basically they're doing that because of having babies, and that's they think that's the role. And even when I'm talking myself, what comes to my mind, and this is 21st century, and we still have these ideas going on. We have these ideas that there are so many women globally that they don't give themselves permission to think about their sexuality, to understand about their sexuality, to explore their sexuality because of their local culture, because of their religion. So when we talk, we're not just focusing on Western women, right? At the same time, within Western population, we see this problem happening too. Like here in the United States, women of California have a different way of looking at their sexuality versus women of, Boston, or versus women in Tennessee, or Western women in Texas, or Western women in Alabama, right? Because each part of this nation, each state has their own unique local cultures, right?
Right.
that allows women, permits women to be to explore about themselves, to give themselves to explore about themselves or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So not every place is the same. However, for men, we don't see that. We don't see that, that uh, basically men don't have that kind of a struggle among themselves. Right.
No, not so much about their sexuality,
Yeah.
although men do struggle with their sexuality
In different
in
ways.
different ways.
Most of it has to do with physicality or physiology of their sexuality, not so much of a body image.
Yeah, well, that's true. Men don't have the same body image problems. Men do have sexual shame when it comes to performance.
Right.
If they feel like they're having erectile dysfunction, if they have a difficult time getting erections,
Right.
sometimes if they have a hard time having orgasms, retarded ejaculation, um, premature ejaculation, which can be okay for the man, not okay for the woman, and then the man, if the woman says something, then the man starts to feel embarrassed, ashamed, things like that. Um, but for the most part, men um, and men's sexual attractiveness, it has more to do with uh, with their station in life. So people who are at the at the higher stations where they're making more money, they have more prestige. The doctors, the lawyers, um, people in government, things like that. That's considered attractive to women as far as more so, more so than the physicality. And so sexual shame is not as prevalent as you say amongst women, amongst men.
Amongst men, yes. So what gives men shame is about, like you said, the variety of negative experiences that they have in terms of their performance. Now, speaking of performance, women also have very much difficulty with their performance that is associated to body image,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when a woman suffers from body image, and whether they have a what is known as the perfect body or an average body, or very out of shape body, um, that impacts their sexual desire,
Mm-hmm.
that impacts their sexual arousal, that impacts their sense of expression and identifying what they want and to actually communicate about what they want. It is as though they don't deserve it. It is as though they're just there to help their partner to have sexual experiences, but they don't really pursue what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how much body image issue brings shame to women in terms of their sexual activity. So when that happens, that combination, either during the very first experience of sexual episode or gradual, it may not even allow women to reach orgasm,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then when they go and they complain about their suffering, unfortunately, the world of medicine just labels these women as, asexual, or they label them as low desire, or, uh, on inability to have orgasm, variety of medical labeling that those labeling doesn't help women basically. So or they're trying to treat that with medication instead, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, we have seen at our practices, both you and myself, that those medication not only they're not helping, but actually they are having negative impact on women's desires.
Mm-hmm.
Because the problem is not the actual desire. The desire is the consequence of how women think about themselves sexually,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So when
Right.
when we investigate and explore the underlying cause of, lack of desire for having sex, or, inability to be assertive during sex, and, talk about and, understand, one's sexual self. We see lots of shameful messages that
Mm-hmm.
has been imposed on women as well as men, of course. So women, form a group of beliefs and perceptions for themselves, and men too. They form certain belief and perceptions for themselves about sexuality and female sexuality collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem is there. The problem is not anything physiological, but what we see as a physiological response is a consequence of the emotional that comes as a result of those negative messages.
Right. Right.
So let's talk
And
about more.
you said that generally speaking, there's about 5% of people who have physiological
Physiological problem.
difficulties, which
Yes,
leaves 95% having to do with how you process your feelings, your emotions, and all the messages that you've been given.
exactly. So more of this right after our commercial break. More informed about how each other's body, has actually is, right? Because they don't see each other in a professional outfits anymore, and they're not all made up, and they see each other in the morning. They see each other as who we really look like.
Okay.
Most of the day in pajamas, and those who work and they have to, be in front of camera, they just change the top. So underneath all of that, sophistications of jobs and titles and everything, the truth of their physics and the shapes and everything, and with no makeup, no hairdo, and all of that, has caused more actually problems between couples, because women complain, well, they can be all made up all day, it's just with everything that they have to do. And if and their husbands, they complain they want that sexy wife at home, even though that sexy wife now has to be a professional in front of camera, has to be a mom, and teach children with their school program, has also ends up doing the housework and everything. And so she's actually more busy than before. And then the male partner, many of them help, and then some of them don't. Right? But their sexual expectation not only has increased, their demand of, they want a pretty sexy female partner in their position has also increased. Right? And I don't think that's such a fair fair situation, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've sort of over the years eliminated the word fair, right? Because we don't really know what's fair. What we know is what we like and what we don't like.
But more pressure on themselves in terms of their sexuality and and shape, and obviously they're experiencing, according to what I hear, more sexual shame, because they are more now in communication and in direct contact with their partners at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, given that, then what can couples do in order to reduce that? Is the question.
Right.
Right. So, okay, if that's the problem, then what is a possible solution? And I think we talk a lot about communication.
Right.
And the idea in all intimate relationships is that I care about your feelings, not just my own. And so when we're communicating with somebody, and that person is significant other, husband or wife, we want to give them that message that I care about your feelings, not just my own. That means that when you're communicating, you want to hear what the other person is feeling. You want to understand what the other person is feeling. And if you give that message to the other person, if the husband gives that message to the wife, I want to understand and hear what you're feeling, and the wife tells the husband, certain things that she likes and doesn't like, the husband can then take it seriously. And simply taking it seriously is a step in the right direction.
Yes, if they do.
If they take it seriously.
Right.
Yeah. Because if they take it seriously, then the wife feels validated, and she feels like she is important to him. And if he doesn't take it seriously, meaning that he's not paying attention, or he says okay, but then doesn't change his behavior, then it's going to lead to hurt feelings and more negative experiences between those two.
Exactly, exactly. And like, I mean, I'm going to bring in something, and I'm not sure how I'm going to relate this to what we're talking about. I have a couple that they're coming to couples therapy, and then they have made some improvement, thankfully. And then, however, both husband and wife, they have lots of issues that they have to work, on it themselves. But the husband, doesn't see it that way, and now he believes if they are not fighting at home, so then she has changed good enough, and then they don't need couple therapy. It is as though that the wife was the problem, right? And then he had no part in anything that was going on, right? And now he has becoming even more demanding about, well, we are at home, we have nothing else to do, so let's have sex more often, right? Where in fact, the issues that was between them, though they were between them, they're not all resolved, and they're just barely resolved. Basically, this is the beginning of their therapy. And then of course the wife, because of everything that she feels about herself and everything that she feels about the relationship, and the fact that she doesn't feel safe to talk about it, many of the issues, right? uh, I mean, she's becoming more assertive, but she's not quite there to talk about. So for her to have sex more often, when her issues about herself and about relationship is not there, and she's fearful to talk about them, right? Not only is not helpful, right, but is actually bringing more questions to the husband. So what else is the problem, right? So when you say that when men are understanding their female partner's feelings and they are responsive to that, we see that some are and some aren't, right? And just because COVID has helped couples to stay close to each other, and they are facing each other 24/7, doesn't mean that more sex is needs to happen and without resolving the issues.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not that if there is an issue going on, it's the fault of just one person, because you and I know very well that it takes two to tango.
It takes two to tango. Yeah. So that what I was saying before it is that, yeah, if the husband understands or wants to understand, that goes a long way towards opening up the communication so that more intimacy, physical and emotional intimacy, can occur. And I think probably the biggest problem that you and I see, and I think you'll agree, is that when people come in, they are focused on the other person changing, and not themselves.
And not themselves, yes.
And that can take one session, or it can take a year or 3 years,
yes,
if the people don't get the idea that, oh, I have to be willing to understand what my problems are, and what my reservations are, and what my fears are, and how that's affecting our relationship. What am I doing?
Exactly.
Because as soon as we focus on the other person, for the most part, the other person then feels defensive, and then tries to focus on you, and now the whole session goes back and forth between whether is it me or is it the other person? Is it me or is it her?
No, and sometimes it is not me, it's the other person. It is not me, it's the other person,
Exactly.
I mean, it's already decided in their mind that it is not me, it's fully the other person.
Right. Yeah.
And that's even a much deeper problem when one partner doesn't want to see his or her contribution into the presenting problem. And sometimes one presenting problem, brings up, so many other presenting problems, other problems that have not been even considered to be a problem.
Right.
So bottom line, during COVID, I hear more shame, more hurt, more sadness, more depressive feelings because of the higher demand of sex on women. And women are not ready to be that, some of them are not ready to be that active sexually, and they're not, they never thought that there will be a time in their life that they are exposed even with their clothes on at home as much to their to their partners, and their partners kind of subjective evaluation of them at this level.
Mm-hmm.
It is as though they have nothing else to do but evaluate themselves sexually, which includes their body shape and all of that.
Right.
And what do they wear, how do they act, and why they are not looking the way they did before pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to comment on was when men and women come into therapy and they're both blaming each other. The issue is is number one, that neither one are really listening, because they're only listening to respond. You're not listening to understand.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to talk about a few minutes ago, about the man listening to the woman. If he's listening because he has an agenda, and he's just listening to tolerate her until she's done talking, and then he can tell her what he thinks, then that listening is usually not productive.
Right.
So that's what I think is missing, I think, in a lot of relationships, is people listening to respond rather than listening to understand. And when you listen to respond, you're sort of placating the other person, allowing them to talk. And then when there's a break in the speech, then you jump in with what you think. And I think that the listening to understand means that if the other person is expressing what he or she wants to express, then you ask more questions, and then you tell them what you think you heard. And then we call that active listening. When you actually listen to the other person to understand, and then when you feel like you do understand, you let them know what your understanding is, and they will say yes or no because they're the ones who are expressing what they're thinking and feeling, and they'll correct you if what you're saying doesn't fit with what they were trying to express. And if it does fit, then you have a, oh, okay, this now I get it. And if you get the other person, and the other person feels like you've got them, then it leads towards more intimacy, both physical and emotional.
Absolutely. In the within sessions, sometimes when the couples, one of them talks, I ask the other person, what did they hear, about their partner's conversation. And it's very, interesting that they talk about what they were thinking to respond back as what they heard, and then they're two completely different things. Right. And then when I say, well, that's not, did you hear that, for example, she said that, or what else did you hear? And then they just stop and they can't even remember.
Yeah, so like I was working with a couple, and they were talking, and the woman was talking about when they get into bed, and he starts making overtures toward being sexual with her, and she doesn't feel connected. In the session, she was saying, so I don't feel connected, and I say to him, please slow down and let's talk first. And then and so she says that in the session, and I say to the man, what did you hear? And he says, she doesn't want me touching her. See, and that's not what she said. She said, please slow down and let's talk first.
Yeah.
He heard, don't touch me.
Don't touch me. So yeah. he applies, his own interpretation as the fact of what she said, but in fact she didn't say that. Right. So this is that we can talk about sexual shame and the impact of it on relationship for days and days and days and days, because it's such a profound and deep topic. However, time doesn't allow us. And at this time, we want to wish you happy holidays. However, you're celebrating that, be good to yourself, be safe, and, consider the safety of pandemic and take it from there. I mean, we're looking at the light at the end of the tunnel. Better days are ahead of us in the coming year and during holidays. And we wish you well. We wish you love and happy holidays, happy New Year. And don't forget that all you need is love.
Love, love, love. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. See you next year. See you during holidays. See you everywhere that you're, present, and be loving.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Serving the Inland Empire and desert communities, this is 1490 AM KMET, Banning, Beaumont, Redlands, and Palm Springs.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. For the second time in as many weeks, an expert panel is recommending the FDA give the okay to another COVID-19 vaccine.
The entire panel advising the FDA to give its emergency authorization use okay to the Moderna vaccine just a week after it did the same for Pfizer. Dr. Avita Fuller says you still need to wear a mask.
Keep each other safe as we go through getting to the type of protection however long it lasts.
Something vaccine studies haven't yet determined. Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
Many places are anxiously awaiting as many doses as they can get. ABC's Alex Stone says that includes California, which set new records today for cases and deaths.
ICU availability here in Southern California is now at 0%. Hospitals in places like Apple Valley and Barstow, east of LA, have patients on gurneys and hallways and waiting outside to get in. Central California's San Joaquin Valley is close to zero as well. And now ICU availability dropping to dangerous numbers in the San Francisco Bay Area. Around California, emergency field hospitals are now taking patients.
California judge today allowing all restaurants in San Diego County to resume on-site dining with safety protocols. That's a setback to the governor's stay-at-home order. Both Senate leaders say they're close to COVID-19 relief deal.
We're going to stay right here, until we're finished.
Everyone is committed to achieving a result, and we will not leave until we get the job done.
The $900 billion plan includes a $300